Back in 1990, I wrote this song called Killer Bikini. Then a few days ago I decided that the song needed a great backstory of its own universe. So I started writing The Tournament. I hope you like it. Thank you. The lyric of Killer Bikini is at the end of the story. It opens. The tournament. The Dukes and Duchesses sponsor ninja schools that fight it out every 4 years. The top 12 squads win for their sponsor a place in the Council of Capital and Trade, which forms the eye above the pyramid and rules our nation. On the first day of the tournament, all the squads from unaffiliated schools meet upon the field. And as Lila, the leader of the bikini squad, walks around, she sees everybody from the greats to the newbies like her, and wondered if at the end of the tournament she was going to leave her mark upon the Great Wall, like the Titans of previous years who rose to take the title Titan, that she would carry proudly for 4 years. Dreamily she walked around. There were many familiar faces, many unknown. Medicine Feather of the Wolf Clan. They were called Ghost Walkers. They were said to possess a magic strike. The Moors, led by Calafia. The Spitfires, led by Pan Ron. Jade and the Subarai Foxes. Zamaya and the Russian Dolls. Daughters of Cleopatra were led by the twins Yusra and Amina. Lila and the Bikini Squad were and then there was also Tara Natula and the Goth Squad. They were both unaffiliated. Lila and the Bikini Squad and Tara Natula and the Goth Squad. So they knew there were big squads out there, choosing not to reveal themselves until the time of battle. Squads that have all trained with a single purpose. All they wanted was their chance to prove themselves at tournament. Time jump. As reward for her great victory, Tipacan, now the Duchess Tipacan, allowed Lila to read the book. It opens. King Henry and the Headless Queens. She opened the book and began reading the founding. The king's wife, Mary, had a friend, Rachel, who meant more to the queen than anyone else in her life. And when Rachel's husband fell out of favor with the king, he lost his head to the executioner's axe, and the queen had to scramble. She pleaded with the king to spare Rachel and her children's lives, so he relented and ordered that instead of beheading, they were to be sent to the north, to the mines. To be sent north to the mines into a harsh and brutal existence. But bribes were paid by the queen's agents, and instead the children were sent to Rachel's brother, Harry's house. He was a merchant by trade, the only one of her brothers that Rachel trusted with the lives of her children. She had no sisters. To be raised as his own, Rachel would visit them as often as he could, and Rachel herself, highly educated and gifted, but now penniless, entered the queen's service as a chambermaid, advisor, and friend. Rachel, unadorned and in plain face, was invisible to the king, who saw only a faceless servant, and in the 4 years that she served him, until his death, he spoke at her and never to her, never recognizing the woman who had sat at his table countless times, adorned and in painted face. It was during this time of transition that she realized how people at the court talked so unguardedly in front of servants. See, since the Normandy conquest, the ruling class has spoken French, with a little English thrown in, while the great unwashed, the lazy and indolent underclass spoke only English. It was a crime at the time to teach French to any member of the great unwashed, the lazy and indolent. So the idea of a servant speaking French thankfully never entered their minds. That is why they spoke so openly and freely in front of her. It was also at this time that she adopted an accent from the lower classes that she had learnt from a faceless servant that she had known as a child. Eventually she became the head of the royal household staff and began hiring women, mainly from her old school, who wanted more out of life than a life spent either in the home or in the nunnery. She offered them a third way, a chance to use their education, their training, and their ninja skills in a life spent in service to the queen. Drawn from many schools, they were to live lives as chambermaids by day and ninjas by night. They would be invisible in the court, but with their eyes and ears open they would serve and protect the queen and her family. The young Prince Henry, who got into several scandals with chambermaids, and before these scandals could get going, Rachel, as head of the household staff, as soon as she found out about them, would either have them squelched with a word, or quickly and quietly have these accusers shipped north to the mines, into a harsh and brutal existence. For as they say, people who draw their power from the monarchy are its fiercest defenders. One of her lessons that has survived to this day is, in the monarchy it does not matter, she said, how smart you are, unless you are also savvy, and learn to go with the flow instead of fighting against it. Realize that power only flows in one direction. As long as you fight against the flow, you're fighting a battle that need not be fought. Because until you learn that lesson, you're going nowhere in life. Your loyalty should always be in alignment with the monarchy. Divided loyalty puts you at risk. Always be savvy and go with the flow. And Rachel, always loyal and protective to the queen, did not bat an eye when Prince Henry, now king, continued to get into scandals with the chambermaids. Then Henry's new wife Maggie told her priest in confession of the king's habit of bringing chambermaids into their bed at night and forcing her to participate in this debauchery. So the priest ran to the king and told him every word she had said, and that he suspected the king's new wife of being possessed by the devil, and suggested that she be burnt alive at the stake for witchcraft. But King Henry did not want any hint of witchcraft touching the throne, so he suggested a wiser course of action might simply be to cut off the queen's head for some minor transgression that had occurred earlier in the court. The priest saw the wisdom of this approach and agreed. So as the headless queens began to pile up, off with their heads, King Henry could no longer sleep at night without being pursued by the headless queens down darkened halls, their echoing heartbeats growing louder and louder until they became a deafening roar, and he would wake up in a panic, always waking up a moment before they caught him. These headless queens, until the one time he did not wake up, his guilt finally having caught up to him. And then during the national wake, Rachel saw King Henry's subjects did not come to mourn him, but to scorn him. Frenemies, many kissed the hand they wished to cut off. And she realized then that the threats against the throne were as much internal as external. So she expanded her agents beyond the court, out into the encroaching underclass. In her later years, Rachel organized her group of agents into the Sisters of Service Council, which kept the group alive and protecting the monarchy long after her bones had turned to dust and her wedding ring to rust. Until the Great Schism, when the king lost his head and the Council of Capital and Trade set up a government that was, by design, a house divided against itself, leaving themselves the true power behind the throne, free to call the shots with all the power and yet none of the responsibility. And the sisters divided into camps, each one loyal to a different duke or duchess. The dream of reuniting the sisters in service under one council was just that, a dream. And yet whenever outside threats arose, the sisters in service, momentarily putting aside all their differences and divided loyalties, would unite in service to the Republic and, using their ninja skills, work to serve the nation and to protect the Republic, just as in the days of old, with undivided loyalty. But as soon as the threat had passed, every duke and duchess had his or her own squads loyal to him or her, reformed and rededicated to them alone. So the Great Sisters in Service Council, once again united during the threat, would once again dissolve after the threat had passed. So a great tournament was organized every 4 years. A 10-member squad from each of the schools would battle each other to win for their duke or duchess the right to sit at the head of the 12-member ruling council of commerce and social order for the next 4 years. It was in the battling, a win is a point, a draw is a half point, a loss is a negative point, and at the end of the day, the top two scorers go on head-to-head for a double point. The top scoring teams, the top scoring half of teams go home. The top scoring half of teams go on to the next day. The bottom scoring half of the teams go home. Each day, all the schools were invited to compete, not just those pledged to or sponsored by a sitting duke or duchess. Opening day is for the unaffiliated to compete, and the top 4 unaffiliated squads go into day 2 when they get to compete against the affiliated squads. That is how both the Goth squad as well as the Bikini squad gained entry into the competition, both from unaffiliated schools. Tarantula and the Goth squad battled with such heart and intensity, never giving up, that they won many admirers among their opponents. But it was only the Bikini squad that had I lost my place. The Bikini squad that had any chance of victory against the squads pledged to dukes and duchesses. So going into the 6th and final day of competition, it was clear that the Moors, led by Calafia, were headed to victory, unless the only other team with the possibility of winning, the Bikini team, led by Lila, could win the double point at the end of the day. So when Tarantula and the Goth squad was matched up against the Moors to begin the final day of the tournament, they took to the field like the fierce Amazon warriors that they were, true and proud and fearing nothing but their God, and squared off against Khalifa and the Moors. And instead of playing for points, playing defense, and playing it smart, like they had up to this point, they held nothing back. Fighting with fearless abandon, they gave it their all and left nothing on the field. So the Moors, having won by points, bruised and battered, yet victorious. But the Goths, having inflicted such heavy damage upon them that Calafia and the Moors fell easily to Lila and the Bikini squad for the double point. So Tara Natula and the Goth Squad, although they had been eliminated, they still left the field feeling pleased that they had shown their opponents what they were made of, and they had softened up a sponsored school so that an unsponsored school, the Bikini Squad, might stand a chance at taking the top prize and being declared Titan for 4 years. Tara Natula expected her sponsor, Miss Halfpenny, to be furious with her at her actions and at her failure to win Miss Halfpenny a seat on the council, but she was not. All Miss Halfpenny said was, "It is time to rebuild. We have 4 years. Let's put it to good use. Good job." Today in the Pyramid of Power, the government is still at the top, but the government, the Pyramid of Power itself, is no longer... there is now an eye that forms above the pyramid, the Council of Capital and Trade. And this eye that forms above the pyramid is the true power, the true owners of the pyramid. The eye that forms above the pyramid are the true owners of the pyramid. And all power now flows towards it. The council is rejuvenated by the tournament. The schools compete, and that is how the Duke or Duchess jockey for position upon the council itself. It is if an unaffiliated school wins a seat upon the 12-member council for its sponsor, then the sponsor of the unaffiliated school becomes a Duke or Duchess. The stakes could not be higher. The Duke or Duchess whose team fails to earn them a seat upon the 12-member council for the next 4 years loses their seat, their position, and their privilege. It is dark days for them. In a monarchy, all power, like money, flows up. The illusion in a monarchy is that a lot of money is exchanging hands, but the truth is that the money flows in only one direction, up. I think that's it. Is there anything in it? Okay, it is not enough to be smart. You must also recognize that in a monarchy, power flows in only one direction, up. Never fight the flow. Instead, learn how to ride it. How to, the fiercest, like a surfer, the fiercest defenders of the monarchy are those who draw their power from it. And then it's a lyric. She's a killer, to my song that I wrote back in 1990. She's a killer bikini, like an assassin with savoir-faire. Like a ghost, she can float over incognito. She can strike you from anywhere. They don't know her name. They can't remember her face. It all happened so quick, didn't leave a trace. Just a high-heeled boot with a kung fu kick, like a brick in the face. It's your final kiss. She's a killer bikini, an assassin with savoir-faire. Like a ghost, she can float over incognito. She can strike you from anywhere. Pretty young woman you wouldn't believe when the chips are down, what's up her sleeve. They never remember what happened so quick. Doesn't leave a trace, just a kung fu kick. Got a list of people who must pay 'cause they committed a cardinal sin. She got a code that she lives by, never let the bad guys win. She's a one-woman army with a karate chop. She's an eliminator that'll put 'em to the stop. They don't know her name, can't remember her face. Just a killer bikini, then she leaves the place. She's a killer bikini, an assassin with savoir-faire. Like a ghost, she can float over incognito. She can strike you from anywhere.